Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining me today because we're going to completely demystify a topic that touches almost every single aspect of our daily lives, yet, it's so often misunderstood. We're talking about marketing management. Today's goal is to break down this comprehensive management process. We're going to move past all the corporate buzzwords to see the actual mechanics of how organizations connect what they create with what we, the consumers, genuinely need.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you hear the word marketing, what's the absolute first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's flashy TV commercials, those persistent social media ads that follow you around, or, pushy salespeople. There's this super common myth that marketing is purely about grabbing a giant megaphone and shouting at customers to buy things. But is that really all it is? Just a tool for aggressively selling what some factory has already pumped out?
Well, the reality is actually so much deeper. By definition, marketing is the management task directed at successfully meeting opportunities in a dynamic environment by transferring a need-satisfying offering to consumers. So the absolute crucial point here is that organizations don't just exist in a vacuum. True marketing has to perfectly align the objectives of the business, the consumer, and society as a whole. It's all about creating real value, not just making noise.
So, here is our roadmap for today. First, what is marketing, really? Second, the core marketing philosophy. Third, targeting the right audience. And fourth, the marketing mix masterclass. All right, let's jump right into section 1. What is marketing really? From factories to relationships. To really understand where marketing is today, we kind of have to look back at how drastically our understanding of it has shifted over time. Right after the Industrial Revolution, management was entirely operation-oriented. It was literally all about what the factory could produce, not what people actually wanted. Then, from the 1930s to the 1950s, we hit this sales-oriented era. Factories were mass-producing all these goods, so the entire focus shifted to just aggressively selling off that inventory. It really wasn't until the mid-20th century that firms became marketing and consumer-oriented, finally stopping to ask, hey, what does the customer actually need? Today, we're in the modern era of the strategic approach and relationship marketing. We aren't just pushing products anymore, right? We're establishing long-term cooperative alliances with highly informed consumers in a constantly shifting external environment. Moving on to section 2, the core marketing philosophy, the principles that guide decisions. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these guiding principles drive literally every modern marketing choice an organization makes. Notice how the marketing concept operates as a series of concentric layers. It's like a giant puzzle. Look right at the center there, organizational integration. Top management, finance, HR, operations, they all absolutely have to work together. You can't have a solid marketing strategy if the rest of the company isn't on board. That core builds outward to social responsibility, then to consumer orientation, until finally reaching the outermost layer, long-term profit maximization. Notice that profit is the result of getting all those inner layers right. It's not the starting point. To ground that somewhat abstract concept of social responsibility in the real world, just take a look at this 2023 statement from Woolworths, South Africa. They explicitly state that supporting communities, addressing food security, and contributing to education are core to their strategy. This isn't just a nice PR add-on. It's a fundamental principle of the modern marketing concept. A business thrives for sure only when the community it operates within thrives.
That brings us to section 3, targeting the right audience, the investigative phase. So if the modern philosophy is all about meeting consumer needs, how do we actually figure out what they want? Well, it relies heavily on data, which comes from two broad paths of market research. On one side, we have problem identification research. This is the broad, big picture stuff. What's the overall market potential? What are the overarching business trends? On the other side, we have problem-solving research. This is highly specific. Once you've spotted an opportunity, you use problem-solving research to figure out your exact pricing strategy, your specific product features, or how to design your promotional campaign. And the research approach changes completely depending on who you're actually selling to. Take a look at this comparison. B2C, or business-to-consumer marketing, is what most of us experience every single day. It targets households and relies heavily on mass advertising and customer relationship management technologies. But B2B, business-to-business marketing, is just a whole different ballgame. If you're selling massive industrial machinery to a factory, well, mass advertising won't work. Actually, scratch that, it would be a total waste of money. It's entirely driven by personal selling and developing really deep, long-term relationships with specific business buyers. But regardless of whether you're B2B or B2C, you simply can't sell to everyone. You have to segment the market.
Here's the systematic methodology for slicing up a really broad market. Step 1, identify the needs. For example, why do people buy cars? It's not just transportation, right? It could be for status, family safety, or just budget commuting. Step 2, group those needs into subgroups. A broke university student needs something completely different from a wealthy business executive. Step 3, select your target markets from those groups. And finally, step 4, position your product directly to that selected group. So, how do we actually categorize these groups? Organizations use the criteria you see mapped out here. We've got geographic factors like climate and region, demographic factors like age, gender, and income, psychographic elements like lifestyle and personality, and behavioral factors like brand loyalty and usage rates. But listen, here is the golden rule. Whatever segment you choose based on these criteria, it absolutely must be measurable, substantial enough to actually be profitable, reachable through communication, and responsive to your marketing efforts. If it's not, then targeting them is just pouring resources down the drain.
And finally, Section 4, the Marketing Mix Masterclass, the ultimate toolkit. Okay, once you know exactly who you're targeting, it's time to take action. This is where the research meets reality. The marketing mix consists of 4 core tactical levers, commonly known as the 4 Ps. They are product, price, place, and promotion. Think of these as the dials and switches a business constantly adjusts to respond to a crazy dynamic external environment and ever-changing consumer needs. Let's break them down, starting with the product.
A really vital part of the product instrument is branding. A product isn't just the physical item you hold in your hand, it's the intangible benefits too. And this brilliantly illustrates the power of branding. These aren't just symbols, they're massive, almost subconscious assurances of quality. A strong brand name literally facilitates consumer decision-making. When you see that logo, you instantly have a set of expectations about design and functionality, which honestly makes price competition way less relevant because the brand itself holds so much unique value in your mind.
But no product stays exactly the same forever. This bell curve represents the product lifecycle. Every single product goes through a journey. There's an introductory phase where development costs are super high and profits are low, followed by a growth phase where sales absolutely spike. Eventually it hits maturity, and finally a declining phase. A smart marketing manager watches this curve like a hawk because the strategy you use to launch an innovation is completely different from the strategy you'd use to squeeze the last bit of value out of a dying product. And that brings us to the second P, pricing. Price is simply the exchange value of a product. It's the fine art of balancing the consumer's perceived benefit against the money and effort required to get it. Businesses use a bunch of different strategies here. They might use skimming pricing, which is setting a super high initial price for an innovative product just to recover all those development costs before competitors swoop in. Or they might use market penetration pricing, starting with a really low price to quickly capture a massive chunk of market share. Retailers also love leader pricing, where they drop prices on certain items just to get you walking into the store, hoping you'll buy a bunch of other full-price things while you're there. The third P is place, or distribution. Notice the different alternative distribution channels here mapping the flow of goods from the manufacturer, sometimes through wholesalers and retailers, all the way to you, the consumer. What's absolutely fascinating here is the fierce battle for channel leadership. Like, who actually holds the power? Sometimes it's the manufacturer creating massive consumer demand, so retailers are literally forced to stock their item. But increasingly, massive retailers like a Woolworths or a Checkers hold all the cards. They control the premium shelf space, and through centralized distribution and insane amounts of customer data, they act as the channel captains dictating the terms to the manufacturers. Finally, we reach the fourth P, promotion, or marketing communication. This is how you inform, persuade, and remind your target audience through a massive, multi-pronged attack. It includes paid advertising on TV or online, personal face-to-face selling, free publicity generated through news stories, and direct marketing. Though it's definitely worth noting that direct marketing is heavily regulated today. Under laws like the POPI Act, you can't just spam people with SMSs or emails anymore. Consumers have to give clear consent, which really brings it all back to that modern focus on building respectful, long-term relationships. So, we've traced the entire journey, from the historical evolution of marketing through the core philosophy of satisfying consumer and societal needs, all the way down to the tactical toolkit of the 4 Ps. Marketing is clearly far more than just a megaphone. It's the vital, integrated heartbeat of a successful organization. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought.
As you look at your own business, or honestly, even just the products you buy every single day, which of the 4 Ps, product, price, place, or promotion, do you think is the strongest building block to create a truly unbreakable connection with the consumer? Thank you so much for exploring with me today, and I'll catch you in the next one.